Welcome everybody to the second Gamescom prep webinar. This one is on deal negotiation. But before we get into that, I would like to do acknowledgement of country. We would like to acknowledge that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of a variety of proud Aboriginal tribes, including the Yugambeh people where I'm based here in Queensland. We pay our respects to Indigenous elders, past, present, and emerging. We recognize that sovereignty was never ceded, and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So, with that, welcome to our second Gamescom training webinar, a webinar to get you in the best position to take advantage of Gamescom. And today we are going to talk about deal negotiation. When I say we, I am very happy to welcome Thomas from Spawn Ventures to this webinar, who's gonna walk you through some tips and tricks how to get the best out of a negotiation, something he has extensive experience with. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Thomas so he can walk you through all of that. Thomas, thanks for coming along.
Thank you. And nice to meet you all. I don't know all of you, but some of you I know. So thank you for joining. I think there's going to be one more guy joining who is called Nicola. He's my associate. He's based in Frankfurt, so hopefully he'll be on in a minute. So so I prepared some slides, like Jens said, which I'm going to take you through. I honestly haven't rehearsed them, but I think it's going to be 30-40 minutes, and then we can have a discussion and talk about, I don't know if you've done other preparations for Gamescom. Would be interesting to hear. I'll be there, of course, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all there in person. Okay, let's see if I can share the thing.
I'm going to take a self-off video, so the stage is all yours.
So, can you see that?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. The only thing is funny, though, because I can't see it myself, but I'm sure it'll be fine. All right, so quick introduction. So I'm Thomas. I have a firm called Spawn Ventures. We are a corporate finance advisory firm. So we advise game developers, publishers on typical, corporate finance matters. So it's fundraising and mergers and acquisitions. We also do some strategy work, but not so much. And the firm is basically me and Nicola, who I just mentioned. You can see the nice photo there. Nicola, if you are on the call, can you please let me know so I know?
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Oh, thanks, Nicola. Perfect. So Nicola is based in Frankfurt and works with me, and I'm here in Sydney. And yeah, I've done M&A for, I don't know, and corporate finance for very long. I was just saying to Jens, I've negotiated deals in many different places. Australia, of course, China, Hong Kong, Thailand, Netherlands, Germany, France, UK, Sweden, Canada, US, of course. And there have been different deals, some small, some very, very big ones. The really big ones were when I was doing M&A for a company called Ericsson, so network equipment manufacturer. I'll get into a few of the transactions. I'm going to see if I, help, lighten things up a little bit by including a few examples and some quotes from previous negotiations. That's it about us. I'll move on. And it's not a big call, so I'm very open to questions and all that. If you want to ask something, can, or do it at the end. It's up to you. Okay, so this is my first quote. So very, very big negotiation in New York many years ago. This was at the time we still had to travel to meet people. We were buying a piece of Microsoft, and I was leading. It was a big negotiations. I was leading a team who individually negotiated different parts of this transaction. So one had IP, one had, you know, revenue, one had commercial, and so on. And I felt I was getting nowhere at all. So I just felt like there wasn't any progress, and whatever I came up with, all the lawyers just said no. Especially then, you know, on the other side. So I called a very senior negotiator, and I said, I'm not getting anywhere. I don't think they want to do this even. Why are we wasting our time? And this is exactly what he said. Don't worry. Of course they want to do a deal. They're there. They flew across the country to sit with you. So take it easy, relax, don't rush it, and you will be fine. And obviously he was right. So Ericsson ended up acquiring, it was called Microsoft Media Room, which was a cable TV middleware. Okay. This is what I'm planning to go through today. So just some context, strategies. There's a little bit of, you know, experience based what I will share, but also a little bit of academics, and talk about, yeah, strategies, who you're talking with, what I recommend that you do not do. Obviously I have to include the question, do I need an advisor? Talk about that, and then some conclusions, and then time for questions. Okay, so first, I mean, this is just sort of an introduction, but negotiation, you can think about it as, you know, when you have negotiation booked in your calendar and you walk into a room and everybody's ready to talk about the specific agreement or something. I think it's broader than that. It starts much earlier, and you know, you can position yourself already when you meet someone, maybe not for the first time, but when you're in a business situation, you can position yourself, and you can have benefit from that later on if you do get into a proper negotiation or discussion. So, and you know, it can be anything. Most commonly, when you talk negotiation, it's about business, but it can be anything. If you're agreeing with friends on where to meet, or with kids. Kids are very good negotiators. They know they're always going to win, and they use it without even knowing how. But they tend to get their way, and it's very common. You do this. If you do this, I'll give you this, or if you don't do this, I'll give you this, and they figure that out pretty quickly. Gamescom, hopefully, I know what Gamescom was like last year. Hopefully, it'll be a similar experience. I think it was great last year, and you will have hopefully meetings both unplanned and planned. I don't know your individual companies, some I do, or your situations, but you could be there because you're looking for investment, or you want to sell your business, or maybe even you want to buy a business or something similar. So this will be a perfect scenario for that early stage negotiation or positioning, if you will. And then there's some other examples, you know, of when negotiation is used in business. Some of you have employees or employers, and that's very common. Negotiate salaries, or and it's, you know, suppliers, customers. I think what this presentation is mainly about is the areas that I know more about. So that would be talking to venture capitalists, other financial investors, and then strategic investors. And when I say a strategic investor to me, or a strategic acquirer, that's somebody from the industry. So Tencent would be a strategic investor or a strategic acquirer, whereas a venture capital firm, they are not in your business, they're just investors, and you have to treat them differently, and we'll get back to that in more detail later. Next quote. this is one, and it's interesting. We can talk about this in the Q&A later. This was also very senior person who I was working for, or he was my client, my internal client. And this was his advice when we were talking before we made the actual offer. So I tried this. I can't say if it worked, but it's an interesting strategy. So we kept telling them that they were amazing and really, really great. And then we gave them an offer which didn't really match what we had just said. Yeah, hard to say if this is successful or not, but I'm sure you have felt it sometime that the first offer is not what you expect it to be. And it's very rarely higher than you expect it to be, in my experience. Here's some strategies, and you can probably think of examples from your own experiences. And I don't think, going into a discussion, if you think about, you talking to an investor or an acquirer or whatever it might be, that you should over strategize and, talk to yourself and say, I'm going to use an avoiding strategy here. I don't think that's right. I don't think you should overthink it, but it's interesting to understand these, because you could be talking to someone who's using a strategy, knowingly or unknowingly, and it's interesting to watch that. And it can also be to your benefit if you understand how or what they're thinking. So an accommodating strategy, you can do it. You can be very, very friendly, but if you're negotiating from a good position, you would rarely have this strategy. But if you have very little to give and you want something from the other side, having an accommodating strategy can work and can get you something. And second sentence there is just what you should keep in mind, especially if somebody is investing in you, or you're now negotiating with the investor, but once that deal's done, you are going to be negotiating on their behalf. So you may not want to be too accommodating, because then they might think that you will be accommodating in future negotiations as well. Avoiding is interesting. It's very, very frustrating. It can be two things. Either you avoid conflicts, but it's also avoiding the actual discussion. And as a strategy, you can make people, what do you say? You can make people do what you want, or give in to terms that you need in a certain agreement, by avoiding discussions, delaying, and yeah, it is very difficult to handle, but it happens. Some people do this, and some people actually get lots for it. Then I think the most commonly used one, and certainly the one that I personally go for, is the collaborating model. This is where you together find solutions. You look at the agreement or the transaction or the deal as a mutual project. You will still want different things from it, and you will still want it to be done in different ways. But if you keep communicating with your counterparty and asking lots of questions, you will understand exactly why they want certain things. And the more you understand, the easier it is to find a solution that you are also happy with. It doesn't necessarily have to be, like the next example there, I give you something means that you win and I lose. That's not at all how it needs to be. So really skilled negotiators using this strategy will ask lots of questions. And I think this is also the best method for finding solutions that are not, on the table, because the more you know about each other, you can introduce other concepts. You can introduce, I don't know, instead of getting paid in money, you can get paid in free IP license or what have you. But it is, I'd say, the most commonly used one. Competing, when you meet sometimes people overcharge and they run into these negotiations as if it's a war, and or a fist fight, and you'll sense it pretty quickly when that would be people who have a long list of must-haves, and they will not back down on anything. But as soon as you give something, they'll just take it and move on to the next topic. You can do it if you have a very strong position. You can do this for sure, but you should be mindful that, and you know this better than I do, but the industry is not that big, and there's a big chance that you will run into your counterparty again in some other context. Compromising is really it's about the attitude that everything can be balanced, every single topic. It's really hard when if you're negotiating a single topic, like, okay, how much is this thing worth? You can say, I'll give you 10, and you say, oh no, I want 20, and in your minds, everybody's going to start thinking, oh, maybe 15 is the right number. But you will always compromise, but using an all-in compromising strategy is, I'd say, not the best. I think you have to be more realistic that certain things need to go certain ways, based on the context and who your counterparty is. I should also mention, I'm going to come back to that, but how negotiations very culturally determined. So different cultures will negotiate differently, typically. And I'm not going to go into what I think for each of these, but it is true, and you need to be very mindful of that when you start these discussions, and respectful, because some cultures may not appreciate the strategy you have chosen. This one is interesting. So this is a pure strategy that when I was learning, a senior guy and I and two others, we were negotiating a big M&A acquisition, and we were expecting a proposal from the counterparty. We were all in a hotel, and we got out, and they put together this proposal, and we sort of knew where they were going with this, and we didn't like it at all, and we wanted to reset the whole discussion. So this senior negotiator said, if they propose something like this, we're all at the same time going to stand up and say it's not acceptable. We can't do this. And we did, and because they presented exactly what we were expecting them to. And then the most senior guy on our side said, what's on the screen now? And as when you're negotiating, and this, you don't have to go to negotiating webinar to know that, but you never really like negotiating with yourself. So if you put something forward, you want the counter offer of some kind from the other side. But what we did and what he said actually made them go back and come to us with a new proposal. And that proposal was not what we ended up doing or going with, but it was much closer. So this was a turning point, I would say, in those negotiations. Okay, so keys to a successful negotiation. But you get better at this, the more you do it. But some things that can help you if you have these in mind when you go to Gamescom or in other situations. So the aim for mutual benefit. This is very much tied to the collaborative strategy. There is win-win solutions, not to everything, but to a lot of things. And the better you know each other, the more you can get out of it. It is a case of 1 + 1 being more than 2 if you follow this strategy properly. Preparation, very important. You need to know what the other side wants. What are they looking to get out of this? And also, one thing to consider is what is their alternative. And I know, a lot of the times you don't have 5 publishers asking to give you money. You have one, and you feel like you're not in the best position to argue about the numbers or the valuations or what kind of marketing support they can provide. But you need to consider what will they do if this proposed deal doesn't go through. And even more importantly, you need to consider what you do. What is your option if this doesn't work? And knowing that will help you in your negotiation. If you've thought that through properly, it will help you. And that's not the same as, what's my lowest number? It's more than that. What do you actually do if it doesn't go through? Communication is quite obvious. It is all about communication, what you say and how you say it. I think interesting, so you saw some of the transactions I've done lately, and not all of them, but some of them were done 100% online. So with the counterparties, or the buyer and the sellers actually didn't meet. So it can be done. You can build trust through Zoom. Okay, and then flexibility and creativity. Yeah, if you come there and you're well prepared, you have multiple options, you know who you're talking to, you know what drives them, you know roughly what they would like to see in a deal like this, that can help you be flexible and come up with new solutions. My advice is to avoid situations where you're negotiating just one issue at a time. It's very tempting to look at an agreement and just make a list of all the things that you disagree on and then do them one by one. I think that's, depending on who you are, if you're buying, selling, or and what your relative bargaining power is, I would typically avoid it. It gets very digital, especially when you talk about valuation. Oh, my business is worth 10 million. Oh, no, it's worth 8. There's not, so you can talk about multiples, but if you don't want to pay more than 8, how are you going to convince that person? But if you add other topics to the same discussion, you can still get a very good deal. And it will make the discussion much easier if you add, like I said, other things to the mix. And you don't risk being locked into different, into each other's position. Relationship building, obviously. Trust and respect. You want to, you don't necessarily have to be friends, just like any business relationship, but you have to be on good terms, and be respectful of their position, their company, and their culture, and so on. It will help you. So I talked about preparation, and this is some, I just put down some bullets of things that I recommend you prepare. And obviously this is now very geared towards the M&A, fundraising, corporate finance type of discussions. But knowing your numbers, really important. You don't want to sit there and they give you a multiple and you have to go back to your P&L to see what it actually means. If you're negotiating and you're promising something great for an upcoming game or or a couple of games, you have to base your assumptions on something. How many copies, how many DLCs, and etc. You need to know that. You should also prepare when you go into this. What do you actually want to get out of it? It's not just about the money. The money is quite commonly, or almost always, very important. But there's so much more you can get out of deals if you go through a well-prepared negotiation. You see some of the examples there that you can include in your discussions. This is also, how much do you need if you're raising money? How much money do you actually need? And it can't be just, 5 million would be great. We can hire this and this, and we can open a studio in a nice location. You need to know how much exactly you need and how exactly you're planning to use them. And remember, it's a plan. It's not a promise, and it's not, you don't have to guarantee it, but you need to have a very strong idea how you will use money. I put here your team. You want to talk about your team. You want to know who your closest people, senior management, depending on the size of your business, obviously. You want to prepare, what drives value. This is more maybe from a marketing perspective, but what drives value in your business, you should be able to explain that in 3 sentences. Next one, who you're talking to. I have a separate slide on this. Really important. Venture capitalists, strategic investors, buyers, very different incentives. We'll get back to that. Also plan your meetings. You never want to rush. The best thing to do, if you are short on time, is to make it a common problem. Don't sit on it and feel like you have to, make progress because your flight's about to leave or you have another call or whatever. Make it a common problem. Say, I need to leave at this and this time exactly, so that it is on everybody. Okay, so your counterparty. This is, I come across this sometimes, that studios looking to raise money want the first thing, the first potential investors that come to mind are venture capitalists. It doesn't suit them always, and I'll explain a little bit more why. So if you're talking now at Gamescom or somewhere else to publishers, what they do better than I do, and they want certain things. They want games to publish. They want low cost on, internally, and high revenue from the games. This is just what they want. I put some platform owners as well, and they obviously depend on steady stream of content being released on their respective platforms. Venture capitalists, the venture capital model is based on a fund, and the fund invests in a certain number of in this context, you know, a certain number of studios. And statistically, all studios will not live after 5 years. Some will go bust, some will be average successes, and then one, or maybe if you're lucky, two, will be really successful. And the two really successful ones have to compensate for all the other 8 that have failed or have not, you know, become something big, that are just normal companies. So, and because the fund has promised a certain return to their investors, this is how the venture capital model works. So it means if you have a steady business where there is no hockey stick, there's you know, there's not a new IP to be released within the coming 5 years, but you're just steady and you're growing steadily, you're doing really well. But it means it's an unlikely venture capital play, because they really depend on those 1 and 2, or I don't know how many percent, 5-10% of companies that become really, really big. That's when they exit, and that's when they pay out and compensate for all the other investments. Yeah, they obviously work with exits and timeline, and when you present to them, they'll be very interested in your team, and you know that already. The team and your product, and you as a founder or senior manager in the company. Strategic investors, you know, I've heard studios say this to me. So, oh, look, we'll get this big publisher in the US or China to invest in us, and you know, in 2 years' time, if they invest 2 million now, their investment will be worth 4 million or 6 million even, if we you know, if our plans go well. But to a strategic investor, that's not really interesting. It's not what they're after. It's not why they're investing. They're investing for strategic reasons. So maybe they want a foothold in Australia. Maybe they want you to become their next chief producer, or maybe you have something in your IP that they need and they can reuse in other games or somewhere else. Or you know, they can make a minority investment, not because they care if it doubles in value and they make $1 million or $2 million in 2 years. They do it because maybe they want to acquire all of you in 2 years' time. So, and these different investors, you have to talk to them differently, and you have to understand why they are looking to invest or acquire a business, your business maybe. Obviously, it's all about money. It's not all about money, but it is one very important factor here, in particular for the venture capitalists. They all say that they're very you know, founder friendly, and they're there to support, and they can help you, and they love the industry and all that, and they do, but it's different. It is about money for them. Okay, that is your counterparty. Oh, this is interesting. This was me traveling to Hong Kong to make an offer for a business that we were going to buy. And we prepared, I thought we did everything right. Obviously we didn't. I'll tell you why later, but, and I had the offer, I had a mandate how much I could offer for this business. And I walked into a room in a hotel, and the room had one round table with 10 people and one empty chair. And that chair was for me. And this was the founder who brought in all of his friends and lawyers and bankers and to participate in this negotiation. And we talked for a little bit, and then I offered him, it was not just one number, it was a document, a letter of intent. and it had a number, and this was his reaction. And that's how this negotiation started. He wanted 40 times what I had offered. And this negotiation had everything. It took about a year, but it had all the tricks in the book, all the interesting late night calls, advisors who were fired because they didn't get anywhere, and so on. But we ended up eventually acquiring this business, and the founder who I was we're still very good friends, me and this guy. So just a few words on this. It's quite, I don't know, it's about personal, it's probably a personal thing, but I think I don't recommend, getting too angry. And you can get angry sometimes, you can get upset, and it's fine. But I've actually been in situations where people throw things across the table in Paris. Binders were thrown across the table when we said something that the other side didn't like. But it's fine if you're a founder and you're negotiating something that's really important to you and to your business. It's absolutely fine to show that and say it, but just don't get physical or start swearing and screaming. I said it before. I don't go into single topic negotiation. I think it's very hard. It just becomes a matter of who has more of the win-lose attitude than the other. It's just not beneficial for anybody. I think dishonesty, and it's not. You can play tricks, but there's no need, and in the long run, it's not going to benefit you. It's much better to say things the way they are and have, well prepared reasons for what you're saying and assumptions behind your numbers. That is a much better way. Yeah, don't rush. We talked about that. Don't over strategize. I think, yeah, it's better to think about it, prepare, but don't go and say, oh, on Monday I'm going to do the win-lose strategy, and then on Tuesday I'm going to do the avoiding strategy. That's not going to help you. It's much better be yourself and be well prepared. And avoid thinking that, this is such a small investment to this publisher, they should just give us the money. It doesn't work like that. Well, you can find someone, maybe, if you're lucky, but that's not normally how it works. And the person you are negotiating with also wants to do a good deal. Everybody wants to do a good deal, even if it's, if the amounts are small. They have a boss and they have a board, and they have to go, they will get the question, did you pay, was it market price, or did you overpay? Why, how can you motivate this number, and so on. So there's no, at least as far as I know, situation which, oh, with 5 million is nothing to this, or they should just give us the money. That's not how it works. And then I already mentioned this. Don't overcharge the discussion by bringing all your 10 banker friends and being at a very expensive law firm. It's not going to help either. This is exactly the situation I was talking about. It turned out in that conversation that of the 10 people around the table, very few had anything to do with this deal at all. They were just there to make me impressed, I think. That's a different way of doing it. Yeah, this is my friend. He also negotiated telecom deals a long time ago. This was when he noticed that I was getting upset with a deal, and this is what he said to me. And this is actually very true. You can, negotiate and be and not give in, but still being very nice and polite and respectful to the other side. This is what he said, and it's true. You are going to end up in a situation where you are negotiating, you're compromising, you have to give something up that you maybe didn't plan to, and you're much more likely to do that with someone who you to give that to someone who's actually nice. In particular, if you consider that there is likely to be a future relationship between you in business. Okay, I'll take you. So, yeah, so we do this, me and Nicola. And do you need a financial advisor? It depends on your deal. It depends on your deal. It depends on your company. It depends on how much time you have in you yourself. Do you need help? Do you need I mean, if you're running a large process, reaching out to 50, 60 potential investors or buyers, it's probably a good thing because it takes a lot of time away from management. Or if you need the relationships that the advisor has, and that is my strong advice. If you're ever get an advisor, make sure you check who they know, because it's really important. Building a network takes a long time. And so, yeah, okay. And but if you're only talking to one investor and you know this investor, I mean, maybe you can do it yourself. You might not need to reach out to so many people. And if you're happy with the deal, then maybe it's worth just going with it and not complicating things. Also, some of you who have raised money, especially VCs, they consider capital raising a key skill that all founders and managers should have. To me, this is an American concept, but they do. So sometimes it's not good to have an advisor because it looks like you can't handle it yourself, and they expect you to. Maybe the amounts are so small you may not be worth it. Advisors, we cost money. That's just how it is. But financial advisor or not, always make sure you have a good lawyer for documentation. It is really important. I recommend all my clients to use a lawyer who does transactions on a somewhat has experience, at least from transactions. Using a family lawyer who has helped the family forever with wills and that kind of thing, or buying and selling property, that's not going to work. You need someone who does transactions. Some conclusions and takeaways. Yeah, you can see on the screen. Be yourself. Relax. Don't overcharge it. Take your time and invest in preparation. It will pay back. Know your other options. We talked about that. It will give you, hopefully, it'll give you confidence, knowing what you can do, and even better if you can figure out what the counterparty can and cannot do if a deal does not, if it doesn't go through. Yep, I spoke about the industry not being too big. You are likely negotiating with future partners or future investors, board members, etc. So that's good to keep in mind. Understanding what drives different counterparties. We talked about the examples of venture capital versus strategic investors. Very different. And lastly, cultural differences. Be aware and respectful. So let me see if I have no more quotes. Oh, should have put more in there. But those are the ones I had, and the quotes are good, right? Because they're all real. They're all from live discussions, so they're quite fun. Okay, I hope you found this interesting. We still have 15 minutes. Discussion, questions.
Yeah, well, look, Thomas, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this. There was some great insights in there. One thing I found especially relatable was the bit about children and how they negotiate. So, if you want to have a tough negotiation partner, I can loan out my 6-year-old for a very, very low fee. So, just let me know. All right, let's see if we can have some questions. There's one in the chat. Let's start with that because Sean asked first. Jane, we get to you later. So Sean is asking, and this is in the context when you talk about your team, do we just introduce the leadership? Do we introduce the seniors, lead programmers? Like, where do you stop?
Sorry, before I answer that question, can I stop sharing? I can, right?
Yes.
I think it'll just give me a bigger photo of you. Yes. Well, it's a good question. It depends on the size of the business, and it also depends on what you are negotiating. If you have 50, 60 people and somebody is acquiring this business, and typically in Australia, the acquirer will be from overseas. So they're going to want to know that this business can run, with the founder, without the founder. What do we do if the founder wants to leave? So I would say all the founders should always be presented. And then depending on size of the business, 1, maybe 2 layers of management even. But you also, when you do that, you should be careful because normally you don't want to involve everybody in your company and tell them what's going on. But at the same time, you're sharing information about them. So you need to be careful what you share when you do that. I think name and role is perfectly fine, but yeah, that varies a little bit. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Jane, you put up your hand.
Hi.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Thank you for the talk. I actually learned a bunch. I was just I'll be going to Gamescom for the first time. And I was interested by when you said you were talking about single issue. So from where I'm coming from it, I want to get in the publishers. I want to be able to secure a deal. That's the single issue I'm thinking about.
Oh, okay.
How can I kind of broaden that, I guess?
Oh, but that's good, and that's, I mean, perfectly fine. That's why you're there, right? So, but when I mean single issue, I mean more like, let's say you have found your publisher, and you make a long list, and they propose an agreement, and you make a long list of the things you don't like in that agreement, and then just picking the first one and talking to them about only that particular point. Or this is most commonly it's about valuation. So getting stuck on a number is quite hard. They will obviously, they're publishers, they will use their size and experience to make things go their way. But that's when I say, it's probably better to also include what kind of marketing support will you offer? Will you do Q&A? Will you do I don't know, and so you talk about multiple things at the same time. That's my point. But going there like you do with that single objective, that sounds good.
Okay, cool.
But be prepared though, somebody might turn up and propose something else.
Yeah. And just one more thing I was thinking. So we've been talking about putting together within our team, within a proper price point for showing off. And we were thinking about, should we be going with multiple options? Like, because the idea is like, this is kind of how much we need bare minimum, and this is how much we would like, or should we just go with like the higher number because it's going to be less stressful? Or do they like to see options, or they?
For a publishing deal, I don't know. I you know what I think? I think there are people on this call who are better at answering that question than I am. I think, to me, if I pretend, it's not a publishing deal, as let's say you're looking for an investment, say, I don't. to me, it's not bad to present multiple options, and you can say, oh, if you invest 1 million, we can hire this and this and this person, and the game can be ready in 6 months. If you invest this number, which is lower, it's going to take us 2 years. You know, that I think is fine. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. All right, do we have any more questions or comments? I guess one thing that comes to my mind now that has been legislated is the importance of the DGTO, the Digital Games Tax Offset, and what it can do for you. As an FYI, we'll be meeting with the Office of the Arts to see if we can organize some webinars on that to bring people across what it is and what it does. But I was having a conversation with the former studio manager of Gameloft in Brisbane, and he made a very good point that if you are looking at a $10 million deal, $10 million US, the DGTO, together with the very favorable exchange rate of the Australian dollars, can push that down to, say, $4 million. Queensland offers a 15% state-based tax offset. You combine it with the 30%, you have 45%. Other states offer 10%, also very generous. So, that is definitely something to look into and highlight in your negotiations, because it ultimately mitigates risks. So keep your eyes peeled for a webinar on that, but also familiarize yourselves with the mechanisms of the DGTO. The Office of the Arts has published all the guidelines on their website and will also highlight it in the updated version of the Level Up brochure that we'll bring along to Gamescom. That's the printed brochure that we've done last year. We are in the process of updating that to reflect the latest legislation. So I think that's something to be mindful of, because it makes you very attractive in terms of your ability to mitigate risk and in terms of essentially lower production costs. All right, so we do have a couple of questions here. Alex is asking, in regards to avoidant negotiation style, we've talked to a potential funding source that has sung their praises and then they've gone cold. You mentioned that some investors will bide their time, but is there any recommendation on how to get them back into the discussion?
Oh, that's a very good question. No, I don't have a magical solution. When I'm in this situation, I just keep trying. There's nothing. What you don't want to do is be under time pressure on your side. If you can avoid that, that's better. Maybe you're talking to them because you actually need money, and that makes it hard. Building options would probably be where I would spend most of my time, meaning start talking to other people. It is very hard, and that strategy can be, if you're running out of money, you're getting closer and closer to where you will accept anything. And if they're very clever, they could be using that. You never know, though. They could just be very, very busy, or they can't get hold of their own investors or whatever. But sorry, that is very hard. I would look at options. Would be my thing.
Yeah, it's also something that Bryce pointed out in the chat, and I think that's in regard to the previous conversation where he's saying, hey, what you should ask yourself is, what are the differences and benefits of each option that you're entertaining in terms of publishers? Also research who you're dealing with and what matters to them. That is a very, very good point, in particular with publishers. Do some high-level research. Not every publisher, for example, is interested in every type of genre, so you're going to make sure you find the right match to begin with. Because otherwise you may be wasting someone's time. And there is some very good examples, like Fellow Traveler in Australia. They're very much interested in narrative-driven games. They probably won't be touching, your party game, for example. So just start on that high level and make sure that at least you have some high level alignment. That already helps. And as Thomas already pointed out, then have a look also what's part of the service offering. Is there money involved, but is there then also marketing? So it's something you may want to consider, given how hard it is to stand out in a very crowded marketplace. So look into those various options and how they can best assist you. Excellent. Do we have any more questions? Yeah, another really, really good comment from Bryson in the chat. Take a look at the catalog of content and also have a look at previous deals they've made in the last 12 months. Excellent advice. That really, really helps, who you're dealing with. I mean, think of negotiating with the publisher. It's a bit like, it's almost like a date, not everybody is going to fit everybody, so yeah, do a bit of research. It really, really helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Preparation is very important.
Yeah, it is. Also, for those of you who didn't make it to our IGEA Education Summit on Monday, we did have a session there on some basic clauses in publishers' contracts. So we'll be putting the recording of that online, hopefully sometime this week. That has all been recorded, and the talk was delivered by Cam Rogers, a very trusted entity when it comes to games and contracts and the law. So keep your eyes peeled for that. All right. There is another question here from Paper Cactus Games. Speaking of looking at the catalog and doing research, would you regularly recommend contacting other studios who have worked with publishers, investors to hear their experiences?
Is that a question for me?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I would say yes, absolutely. But Thomas, feel free to disagree with me.
No,
agree.
I don't. I don't. It's no, it's part of your research. Yes, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
How are they to deal with? That's very good information before you go into your negotiation. So if you know someone who's done a deal with them, it's perfect. And you can also find out what they're interested in and what they like and what they don't like. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've done this before. I've connected IGEA members to others who I knew that, had a deal going with the publisher. It's like, oh, you're working with this type of game that could be of interest to them. Let me introduce you to that studio so you have a conversation, know what they like to deal with. And it's a scenario in which everybody wins. There's a publisher who gets good content recommended by someone they trust. So yeah, no, I definitely recommend going out and talking to others.
So thank you for joining, everyone. I really hope you got something out of this. Even if, the examples or the quotes and all that if you feel it doesn't really directly relate to you, it's always good to spend a little bit of time thinking about these things, because you are likely to get into some form of negotiation soon, and you might remember something from this presentation, or just it will have given you some time to think about it, at least. So thank you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Thomas. Also, if you ever decide to have children, there's some really good advice in there as well. I'll be taking that suit tonight. All right, well, look, again, thank you so much, Thomas. That was fantastic. I'm very much looking forward to catching up with you at Gamescom. To the rest, thank you all for coming. And you may have seen my update via email today. I'll be sharing with you the design of the stand hopefully very soon. We're currently reaching out to the owners of the art to make sure that we're using it in a way that's appropriate. And so once we've done that, I'll be sharing it with you. I think it's shaping up quite nicely. It's going to look a bit funkier than last year because we don't have to use the nation brand. So it's going to be very colorful. And the DGTO is going to figure very prominently in that as well. So that, people know how attractive Australia is to invest in and what you have to offer. So Thomas, thank you very much. And
sorry. No, just very, very quickly, because I can't see who you are on the screen. So at Gamescom, please come and say hi to me, Nicola, because we will be walking around the Australian pavilion. It would be great to meet you. Thank you. Sorry,
absolutely. Jens. No. Yes, and absolutely. If look. Thomas has worked for some of our members before, has negotiated some fantastic deals on their behalf. So I very much encourage you to have a conversation with them. You have seen his expertise. In a previous slide, he listed some of the deals that he was involved in. And let me tell you, that was very, very, very impressive. This is coming from a great place of expertise. So yeah, no, absolutely. Talk to Thomas. Have a chat with him, use his services. He really knows what he's doing, evidently. So, let's all meet up in Köln, have a chat, have a coach.
Thank you, Jens. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, take care and talk to you next time. I think it's on the 4th of August when we have our last webinar with Michal about prepping for Gamescom. See you then. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. See ya.